Well, hello, you're watching Much Ado About Something today, and I'm Donna, and I'm glad you're here. If you're new here, welcome, and if you've been around for a while, welcome back. Well, it's a beautiful, hot, warm. It's up in the 70s, about 78 degrees today, a late October morning. The leaves are changing. It's beautiful around here, but it's still warm. But I can't stay out here and garden today. I'm inside today. I'm working inside. I've procrastinated long enough. I've got some work I've got to do. I've got to get it done in a timely manner. So I'm in here this morning working on these apples. If you'll remember, if you've watched my channel and you saw my previous videos, you remember I went to the orchard and I bought 4 bushels of apples. They were picked fresh that day, picked off the tree, wonderfully firm, and they've been waiting on me. I've had a few things I had to go get done before today, and so today is the day that I've got to process and put up some of these apples. I'm in here. Now I've got the stamens that I bought, the bushel of stamens, the bushel of Golden Delicious, the Arkansas Blacks, and the Romes. Here's half of the Arkansas Blacks. I pulled them out over here. They're a dark apple, or really got a beautiful flesh on them that leaves a beautiful color in your applesauce or whatever you cook with them. I've got them right here. And if you can see right here, it says perishable, keep cool. So I don't have enough room to cold store these apples. I don't even have an extra refrigerator that I can put these apples in. So I have to process these apples in a different way to keep them. Now I've gave some away to my sons, to my family, and I've kept some out here for fresh eating. So I've got plenty of delicious use out of these apples already. We've really enjoyed them fresh from the orchard. Well, I'm going to today go ahead and cut my apples up. I've got a setup right here. As you can see, I've got cold water here, and I've got salt in this water. And what that does is it keeps these apples from turning brown. Now you can use citric acid or lemon juice in your apples if you want to, whatever you have on hand, whatever you're used to using. But in the mountains, in the Appalachian Mountains growing up, when we peeled our apples, we put them in salt water because we always had salt on hand, and it was easy to just make a bowl and put this in, and it'll keep them from turning. Now I've got a bucket here that I'm putting peels in. These peels will be used for other purposes. I'll make vinegar. I'll do other things with these peelings. And here are the cores, the stems, and the seeds, which I don't use most of the time in any recipe. But I'm going to go ahead and peel these apples. I normally don't peel these apples. For applesauce, I normally just take the core out and I go ahead and put them in a big pot and I cook them that way. And then I strain them later when I make the applesauce. But this time I thought I would go ahead and do this. I'm going to make some apple pie filling also with these apples. But I'm going to make the applesauce first. Well, I may make the apple pie filling first. I'm not sure. Anyway, I've got to get these apples peeled up either way, whichever way I choose to use them. And I'm inside working on these apples today because I don't want not one to go bad, and not one has gone bad. They were fresh picked, and they're ready to be processed, and I'm going to be doing that today. Now, if you recall, I went with my sister. I don't let the cats up here when I'm doing this because I don't want any kind of cat hair in my apples, so I always spray them with water to make them get down. But I went to the Appalachians with my sister. If you watch my channel and you watch that video, then you'll see some things that we did. And as we were on further up in the Appalachian Mountains, those beautiful leaves were turning. It was just a beautiful time to go to see all those beautiful leaves changing. But they have outlooks all the way up the Blue Ridge Parkway where you can pull over and take pictures and just view the beautiful scenery that is all along that Blue Ridge Parkway. It is sincerely, truly beautiful, and there's just a lot to look at up there. We went up there to visit family. On one of those outlooks, there was a sign. I've got a picture of that sign, and I actually want to print that sign off, frame it, and put it in my kitchen. if you watch my channel, then you know that my mother her family, growing up, they picked apple orchards. Well, they picked a lot of orchards. They picked cherries and other things too, but mainly apples. And they were kind of like sharecroppers, but instead of picking fields of farm produce, they picked the orchards. They picked the apples and the peaches and the things that came from the orchards from where they're from there in the Appalachians. It's a wonderful part of my culture, and we ate a lot of apples when we were young. When we were younger and Mama cooked a lot in the early days, we ate apples. And one of the ways we ate those was very common to have as a side dish. Mama would just peel the apples, core them, stew them on the stove, and she wouldn't add anything to them. There wasn't a lot of spices. We didn't add cinnamon or anything like that to them. They were just cooked apples. Now, when we got them out on our plate, we would add a little bit of butter and maybe a little bit of salt. That was it. We just ate apples right there, as simple as it comes. The only ingredient was apples and water. That's what we ate a lot of the time. And of course, we ate a lot of potatoes, and I love potatoes. But apples have a special place at my table and a special place in my home. And I'm thinking about redoing my kitchen. I'm going to redo my kitchen a little bit and maybe add some apples. I got that nice apple bucket that I was able to visit the orchards and able to purchase one of those apple buckets. Mama used a bag most of the time. They also had a bag, but for the purpose that I needed it for, to hang in the kitchen, I went ahead and bought the apple bucket. And if and when I'm able to do that, I'll share that with you. I'll share how I decorate the kitchen using those things from my past that mean a lot to me. Now, on that plaque that they had there on the Appalachian Trail, they had these words, and I'm going to read them to you. I'm going to read you what they had on that plaque. Apple tree, apple butter, apple cider, apple sauce, apple pie. There were few homegrown products more useful to the mountain farmer than apples. Cuttings from favorite trees were often taken from place to place when the family moved or when children left home. Today, old apple trees often indicate the location of a beloved but abandoned mountain homestead. And that is certainly true. Everybody had an apple tree, at least two, maybe more. Most of them had more. And the wonderful thing about those apple trees back then is that they produced a lot. In those size families, when you had 10 kids or you had 12, 13, 15 people in your family, sometimes people had more. When you had those big families, an apple tree would provide enough every year to make a plenty of food. In addition to everything else that they ate, those apple trees were a wonderful addition to their diet. Not only to their diet, but they made many other things out of them. You know, the apple peelings, apple cider vinegar is a common thing. You grew up without apple cider vinegar, you cleaned with it. There was a lot of things you could do with your apple cider vinegar, and that was a staple too that was edible and also useful in other ways. Now, we ate a lot of apples, and Mama said one of her favorite stories about the apples was when you gathered everything and you put up everything and put up your food for the winter, and it was stored and you used it, but about halfway through winter, you were kind of tired of everything that you were eating. You were kind of tired of the same things that you had every day. But she said one of her favorite memories is when she would go out and dig up under the apple trees and look around up under the leaves and things up under the apple tree, and she would find a little apple that had hidden away and was preserved, perfectly preserved out there under a pile of leaves or something. And she said there it was, fresh and delicious. And she said that was one of her favorite memories, was finding those little apples up under the tree like that and sitting down under there and just eating the apples. So that's a sweet little memory that she shared with me that she had. And of course, they foraged for a lot of their food up there in the mountains. Mom and them, her family, they could eat a lot of things that most people wouldn't recognize today. They foraged for their food, ate blackberry tips, raspberry tips, made them into a greens, kind of green cooked salad and ate that. and many, many other things. I share on my channel some of the things that I'm familiar with that Mama shared, and I learned from growing up, being around those Appalachian people that foraged for a lot of meals. And I love those old traditions, and I like a lot of those dishes. I love plantain. Mama said they would just harvest plantain and make greens out of that, and then, you know, her family hunted, and whatever they brought in that day would be the meat, and they would eat the meat and the greens, the plantain greens, and usually potatoes and apples, and that was a meal, and it sounds good to me, and it sounds healthy. Today, I use applesauce for a lot of different things. I plan on sharing some of those things that I use with you in the upcoming video. Some of the ways that I use applesauce, and there's one in particular use for applesauce that has increased my need for applesauce. So I'm going to make a big batch of applesauce and have that on hand for that replacement. You know, it will replace something in my cooking cabinet that I am trying to reduce. So I'm really excited about making a lot of applesauce and using that this year. And of course, the apple pie filling. If you've been around and you saw my apple pie video, my fried apple pies, Appalachian fried apple pies, then you know how much those are valued. I make those for Mother's Day for our mothers, and I make them around Christmas time, Thanksgiving and Christmas time. I don't make those all the time because we would eat them all the time. They're so delicious you can't stop. I mean, they are good, and they are such a treat. I try to make them at least twice or 3 times a year, and I'll be making more this year. And there's a video on how I make Appalachian fried pies. Some people call them hand pies, but where we're from, they were Appalachian fried pies. Now, you had different kinds of fried pies. You had berry pies, cherry pies, even some lemon pies at times, but the most common fried pie was the apple pie. It was the fried apple pie, and man, they are good. And I've told in that fried apple pie video about how my great-grandma made those pies and sold them. She started out selling them for 50 cents, which was a lot of money. It was a lot of money back them days to pay 50 cents for a fried pie, but she never took them anywhere that they didn't get gone. And then I think by the time she stopped selling them, they were about $1.50, maybe a little bit higher. She's making a little bit more out of them. But they take a little time to make, individually made, and they are delicious. I would pit them against any French pastry you have. French pastries are delicious, but a fried apple pie, it could hold its own in any pastry contest. That's how good they are. And if you're interested in how to make that, then go to my channel, look up that video, Appalachian fried apple pies, or even just Google it. Just Google or search for it in YouTube, and you'll find fried apple pies, and you'll find how I make those. And there's a favorite simple way that I love to eat apples, which is just as simple as it can be. But I love to make a batch of biscuits, and I love to make stewed apples and let them stew for a little while and get good and soft and brown and delicious. And I like to eat them over a biscuit. I like to eat cooked apples over a biscuit. I can eat applesauce over that biscuit. I can eat apple jelly or jam. I can eat apple butter. Either way. But to me, it's just, the apples are just good on top of a biscuit. That's my favorite way to eat these apples. But I've went on long enough and shared with you about the apples. I'm going to go ahead here and get back to work. I just wanted to share with you how I'm processing these apples, what I do to get these things peeled up and ready to make recipes. And then I'll share with you some of the things I do with these apples in future videos. That's my plan anyway. I thank you for joining me today and let me share this with you. I hope you'll come back and maybe get a recipe or two and try some good old apple recipes. They're great for Thanksgiving, great to take to your gatherings for Thanksgiving. I make a traditional apple cake. I call it the world's best apple cake, and it is delicious. I also have a video on that And if you're interested in that, find that. That's a delicious, delicious apple cake. Very traditional, very good at this time of the year, and it's good to take to any kind of gathering you might be going to that you'll need to take a dish. So I want to encourage you maybe to try that apple cake and enjoy it and some of the other recipes that's on my channel, and look forward to the new recipes that are coming out. Thank you for joining me today, and like always, until next time.